Hello, I'm Jeff Jones, and I'm going to be talking about the data I collected for my platforming level. Um, first off, with my five testers, I had two advanced, one intermediate, or sorry, two advanced, two intermediate players, and then I had one very, very beginner player as far as my testers go. So, just going down the list here, starting with the results. So, Well, actually, let me talk about the level layout of my level. It and I'll go with short, medium, long. So the short level is a simple, just left to right, collect your pistol, um, engage your first group of enemies. Then you're going to continue on and grab your double jump pickup. Once you have your double jump pickup, you do a short IPM all the way to the right, and then you hit the next checkpoint. Once you hit that checkpoint, you get the other pickup for the dash. So now you learn how to dash, or ideally, the player learns how to dash and couple that with double jump. Once they complete that section, they hit another checkpoint, um, and then actually no, that's the only checkpoint for that one for the short. And then they hit the level end after they complete the double jump slash dash section. In the medium, I expanded that exact same level. This time, I added more verticality. So once they complete that first section that was included in the short, I added a drop down to a spike pit, and I took inspiration from the what we looked at during lecture, which was a game where they would like kind of like telegraph the spikes. Um, the player would see it to their left through a wall. But so there's another short vertical section that gets them to the level end, and then with the long, it's just a very expanded version of that. And then they drop all the way down to the bottom, and then they rush to the left through a horde of enemies, and eventually reach level end. So starting with my first tester, the data shows here that it's not really quite on target for him. He's very good with platformers, especially on PC. He did give me decent ratings for difficulty, and he hesitated. This is one of the big, this one right here, hesitated at the first enemy. That's one of the biggest patterns I noticed. And I'll just kind of overview like the patterns in general for this section, but players would hesitate with the first enemy after they collect the pistol. And then, here this player, was assessing headshot versus body shot. I counted that as the pattern as well, just because it was at the first enemy, and once he realized that, then he sped through. And then, so that was pretty on point with the advanced players. The intermediate players, I felt was a little bit more on target. Um, so I did get kind of on my short level here. The trend is that was very easy, except for my beginner player, who was a very, like I mentioned before, a very, very beginner and required more coaching throughout the process. But once we got through some initial control barriers, eventually she was able to clear each level. Now, this brings me to my A/B testing, and I chose to actually remove um, the breadcrumbs, which the coins, and see if that would kind of like slow down or encourage players to like explore the level a little more rather than just rush through it. So that brings me to the A/B testing comparison. So the average completion time, uh, I had my beginner player and my one of my advanced players, just to get like kind of like the extremes on both sides of the spectrum. To get my average time of, since I chose to do the short level, of 2 minutes and 48 seconds. So that gets me a little bit more on target. And the average difficulty between the two gets me right in the middle. And I feel like I'm happy with that. But the common engagement themes for version A before the change was pausing before enemy encounters. And does this support my hypothesis? Let me go back and actually tell you my hypothesis. By removing the breadcrumbs, This will increase overall completion time due to player requiring more spatial and directional awareness to navigate the level. And this version will hopefully, and for what the goal is, this level will hopefully push players to slow down to navigate the level, increasing average completion time. So, um, did version A um, did this support my hypothesis? No, the same trend. So like the same thing happened with the combat, where they were pausing to engage that first enemy. So a note here was possibly lessen the number of enemies, or um, yeah, just lessen enemy total enemy numbers. For version B, I had my intermediates and one advanced, which I feel like gave me a more accurate uh, time with by removing the coins. So the average completion time is 1 minute and 20 seconds with an average difficulty of 2 or 1.7, I should say. Um, I'm not happy with. I would have liked this to be a little bit closer to 3, but I'm happy since the advanced player was in the mix. So that I feel like that's a good score overall, especially it being like an introductory type level. Um, Exploration became more important. I noticed players would spend more time maybe looking and navigating for more pickups, seeing if they missed anything. Um, they were more inclined to explore. Uh, a note I added here because of that was add more desirable pickups. The ability pickups were well received. And so this brings me to proposed changes. One of the comments I got or one of the things I did notice is that the lighting in my level is a little dark. So sometimes they would get a little lost in darker sections. So the finals, and then evidence from the testers, final section was boring and uneventful. So add more challenging obstacles and platforming sections that require higher skill to complete. Um, I would also add, this isn't in my because I ran out of space, but I would also adjust the lighting of the level too, just to increase maybe perceptual engagement and see if that would help. Um, but overall, this should increase the difficulty, average, and completion time. The other change I would like to address would be sometimes players would slow down at the wall jump sections. Uh, and this was another one too, especially with my intermediate and advanced players. The level was too easy. So add more traps to encourage more skillful movement for evading traps and enemies. And this should increase player engagement and overall enjoyability. So with that, that's all I have to say about the changes for this. I will see you for the next section. Thank you.